In my article, The Need for Spirituality in Business, I want to talk about business as a method of transacting ideas. And somewhere it seems like we made a huge shift out of the idea that we could live in a tribal community and uphold each other and watch out for each other, and the idea of business, which took that concept to another level in that it gave someone the ability to maintain and control resources. So our ability to differentiate what is truly of value and what is of symbolic value has been disrupted. In determining what's valuable, I use the idea that if I were to want a bowl of berries, there is an intrinsic value to those berries because they do something to my personal energy. They keep my brain functioning, they keep my body functioning. And if I were to trade, let's say, some strawberries for some blackberries, they both have intrinsic value. And it's obvious that the value of one is similar to the value of another. I'm just trading taste or flavor. Business is the idea that we can have something of symbolic value equal the value of the thing that has intrinsic value. In other words, money, coin, that has a symbolic value. It's really not worth anything but the value that we place upon it, as opposed to having intrinsic value like the berries. So business is the idea of trading intrinsic value for symbolic value. And that is a very important distinction because that is what business is based upon. And I can't really manipulate that this is a berry, but I can manipulate the symbolic value of the money that I trade for the berry. So to combine spirituality and business, or to understand how value affects business, it is important to recognize that we can place value upon inanimate objects like a coin. However, that is not intrinsic value like a human being. A human being has mechanical force that they can utilize to accomplish something. They have creativity in which to accomplish something. They have a brain that allows them to think and come up with ideas. So a human being has intrinsic value. However, business ventures from the past have taken away the value of human beings and not replaced that value with something else. So, for instance, the Dutch East India Trading Company went to, especially India, to obtain spices, herbs, cloths, and didn't necessarily return back to those cultures what could have been a very dynamic interrelationship, but rather went there and dominated the culture. So if they had truly given back to the culture, they would have made sure that there was equal opportunity for all laborers. They would have done something that benefited the culture in terms of how the culture wanted to live, instead of imposing its own ideas of how the culture should be, and to take from that culture the resources that came naturally to that specific geographical environment. So to bring spirituality in is to bring in reciprocity. To bring in spirituality is to recognize that the resources that come from a geographical location on the planet need to be mediated, that there's a replenishment of the things that you take from a culture, and that the hands that actually do the labor should be rewarded. What happened was the business itself um, became incredibly rich, and so did all of the investors into the business, which created the stock market and the idea that you can take money and put it into a company to support whatever is their business venture is, and just reap the rewards of that when they pay dividends, but not really recognizing what that company and its practices are doing to affect the places from which they're gathering their resources. Another thing that businesses tend to do is build the business around people's wants and desires. Now, the difference between a want and a desire is uh, very small. A want is something that you might say that you have a deficiency of, and a desire is something that you believe is going to bring you pleasure. That's a very simple way of looking at it. And businesses that cater to those things have a tendency to cater to some of the worst parts of humanity because they often cater to addictions. They often cater to things that actually don't ever bring fulfillment for a person, but rather give temporary relief or temporary distraction from the spiritual process, which is always to confront what our desires and wants are and to recognize them or balance them with our needs. And what happens is because of, I'll use the example of food, you could need to have some nutrition. You could desire to have something that tastes really good. And sometimes those two don't go hand in hand. Sometimes, if you have a craving for a lot of sugar, which is a desire, an endless feeling of needing to have sweetness in one's life, you might be living on soda and donuts as opposed to what your actual needs are, which is to have nutritious food in your body. So, when a business caters to someone's wants and desires, it's actually not really catering to giving the best to that person. And it also um, gives the false presentation that the want and desire should be fulfilled by giving more of that want and desire, making it easily attainable, as opposed to um, helping people recognize that what they actually need, which is love, connection, nutritious food, a place to live, um, that those things aren't really as important. So uh, our values get mismatched, and sometimes the negative or the non-wholesome part of our imbalance wants and desires are out of balance with our actual needs. Another thing that uh, bringing spirituality into business might be that the business supports the soul's purpose. So this goes both for the people that the business is serving and for the business owner themselves. When you are in line with your soul's purpose, the soul always wants our liberation. It wants us to come into congruity with love and connection and support. And when a business owner knows in what way they can fulfill that for other people, it brings the business into a powerful alignment with the natural forces of law and reciprocity that exist on our planet. And then that business supports other people's needs because the guidance for the business itself is in alignment with a higher principle, the soul's principle of reciprocity, of connection, of bringing love to the planet, of being in balance with Mother Earth, being in harmony with the Earth being a spiritual being. So business in many ways has lost this connection. And a good example is a recent expose of the Rainforest Action Network, where they did a very thorough examination of how the banks, the major banks on the planet, have been funding the extraction of gas and oil, very dirty form of energy from the planet. And if you've ever seen pictures of like the tar sands up in Canada, what they leave behind is revolting. They tear up nature and they leave behind gross oil-laden fields that are toxic to the people that live close by those fields. So when businesses are engaging in those kind of practices, we're out of balance with the soul. We're out of balance with the harmony of living with Mother Earth. So the thing that's difficult also is that it's important to recognize how we make decisions in the present. And a great Native American practice is that of making a decision now based on how it's going to affect the next 7 generations. And if we restructured our thinking around how we made our decisions about how it's going to affect the future, I think that the outcomes that we would create would be vastly different, much more harmonious. I touch on a lot of these factors in a new course that I just created called Building a Sacred Business. If you have a desire to merge spirituality with your business or your career, and really connect it to your soul's purpose by understanding astrologically how you came into this world with a certain mission for the soul to accomplish, and bringing that understanding in your life with your business, um, check out the link that I have at the bottom of my article and set up an appointment with me and we can talk more about it. Thank you.